So, now we will be seeing the other component, that is known as cognitive function. So, what is cognition? Cognition, when we define, it is dealing with higher mental functions. Okay. So, in this particular component, we are going to test all the higher mental functions of the individual. Now, till now what we have seen the journal appearance, that is component number 1. In component number 1, we had seen that how we observe the patient and we look at the outer appearance of the patient. And along with that came the second component, that is the psychomotor disturbance or psychomotor activity, where we see how is the psychomotor activity of the individual, whether it is raised or whether it is low or it is completely absent and all these things. Then in component 3 we saw about the speech. Okay, speech, in speech we have seen that how to observe the speech patterns, the intensity, the flow, the spontaneity and all these things, reaction time, right. And then we came to thought. Okay, so in the first 3 components we do not need to ask any particular questions, we are just going to observe the patient and actually going to make draw conclusions about that. Then we came to the heart of the MSc, that is the thought, and we have seen in detail that how thought content is assessed. So, we assess various types of delusion and all these things in thought content. Then we had seen about thought stream and thought form, and then the next component was mood and effect. In mood and effect we saw about how the mood and effect are related to each other and how are we going to write about it. And then we saw about perception, and we saw perceptual disturbances in which we had seen hallucination and illusion and various types of hallucination and illusion. And now we are heading towards the cognitive function. So, in cognitive function there will be a lot of questions that are asked to the patient, because we want to assess the functionality of various aspects of cognition. So, in higher mental function, what all things come? Thinking, reasoning, judgment. Okay. So, what is thinking and reasoning? Thinking and reasoning is we process a thought. Like suppose if I tell you to hold in hand a red burning rod, okay, an iron rod which I had put in the furnace, and I take it out of the furnace and give it to you, it is red, piping hot. Will you be able to hold that? I think no one will be able to will be ready to hold that. Why? Because we have seen that this is a red hot iron rod, and if we are going to touch it, we are going to have a burn on our hands, and it will be a severe burn because it is hot. Okay. So, we are thinking about whether it should be done or not, and then we give rational what do you say implications. We give a rationale for that, whether it needs to be done, why what will happen if we touch it, or what will happen if we hold it in our hands, okay, or bare hands. So, this is called as thinking and reasoning. Then there are other mental functions such as memory, very important mental function, and judgment. Okay. So, when we are talking about thinking, reasoning and the iron rod, we are also using our judgment, okay, whether to do this or not. And then another part is attention, concentration. Okay. So, these are all higher mental functions, and because we are testing the mental status of the individual, it is important to also test the higher mental functions of the patient. Okay. So, in cognitive function, again, first thing we are going to see is the consciousness of the patient, how conscious the person is, right. So, the first thing becomes utmost important, that we are going to see the consciousness level of the individual. The second thing that we assess in cognitive function is orientation. Okay. What is orientation? Orientation is actually awareness of the surrounding, right? So orientation is awareness about the surrounding. So in orientation we are going to test three things: orientation to place, orientation to person, and orientation to time, right? So orientation to place, what does that mean? So when we are doing orientation for place, we ask the individual whether he is able to recognize the place where he is at that particular moment. Suppose if he is in the OPD building, that is in the hospital, he should be able to reply that he is in the hospital, or contrary, if he is on if he is at his home, he should be able to reply that he is at home. Okay, so this is known as orientation of place, right? So we do usually, when we ask of orientation, we ask a 5-step question, that we start from the country, the state, the city, the local area, and the place that the person is. So we actually funnel that information. Okay, so that is for place. Orientation for person, the individual will be able to know the person that are along with him, suppose the relatives or the members of the healthcare team. We can also ask as assessors that who are we. So the person will be able to tell that okay, you are nurses, or you are doctors, or all those things. Okay, so this is orientation for person. The patient is able to recognize who the people are. Then lastly, orientation of time. So in orientation of time, we again ask set of questions that what time of the day this is, okay, which day is it, what is the date today, which year is this. So when the patient answers all these questions, we say that the patient is oriented to time. So there are 3 dimensions in orientation. One is orientation to place, another one is orientation to person, and the last orientation to time. You can actually change the order also. It is not mandatory that you follow this order, but you can also do time, place, person. Okay, so this will actually tell us the awareness of the patient to the environment, and awareness of the patient towards the people that are there, right? So next is attention and concentration. So in attention and concentration, we have to test what is the attention span of an individual. Now attention is very subjective, again very subjective. It can change from person to person. In a classroom setting, usually we have attention span, adults usually will have attention span of not more than 40 to 45 minutes. After that we need some break in order to have that particular have that focused attention on some on the task that is given to us. But people who are suffering with mental illness will have a very short attention span, might have very short attention span. So we need to test this attention. How is this attention working, or is the attention intact or not? So there are certain tests which are given to the individual. These are standardized tests. These cannot be changed, and we mark the patient accordingly, and then tell whether the patient is having proper attention and concentration or not. So what do we do first? We give them an exercise. This exercise is known as 100 minus 7. Okay, so this is a subtraction exercise. So we tell the patient to minus 100, so minus 7 out of 100. Okay, that is why it's called 100 minus 7, and they have to do it 5 times. That means 100 minus 7, 93. 93 again, 93 minus 7, right? So this type of subtraction has to go to 5 levels. So they have to subtract 5 times, and usually 2 mistakes are acceptable in patients. We allow them to make two mistakes. Not that we say that you can make 2 mistakes, but if they make 2 mistakes, that is considered, and usually takes nearly 2.5 to 3 minutes to complete this exercise. Okay, so I would like to also tell here that in orientation, attention, concentration, we need not be very strict with the marking. Okay, we have to give, suppose we are taking orientation, we have to give the patient enough time to actually analyze. Now suppose there are times when we will be asked okay, what is the date, and we will also sometimes struggle to answer. Someone asks us, suppose, what is the time of the day, we will also have to look at the watch and tell what is the time. So we have to be very generous, don't be very strict teachers in marking this, because ultimately these are patients. So be very generous with the marking. If after 2-3 attempts also the patient is not able to come to the right answer, then probably we will say that the patient is not oriented. So again 100 minus 7. So if the patient is not able to do this exercise, don't just say that the patient is having a less attention span. Okay, we can give a considerably smaller exercise, but again this is standard, do not change the digits. So if the patient is not able to do 100 minus 7, we will tell the patient to do 50 minus 3, 50 minus 3. Okay, again the same principles are there, they have to do this for 5 subtractions, 5 times they have to do it. Usually one mistake is admissible, and it takes 1.5 minutes to complete this exercise. So they have to finish in this time frame, one mistake is admissible. Or suppose if someone is still not able to do this, we go again one step down, that is 20 minus 1. Okay, 20 minus 1, and here in this exercise no mistakes are admissible. So you see the hierarchy. So we start off with 100 minus 7, that is to be done 5 times. Next is 50 minus 3, that is again to be done 5 times, and next is 20 minus 1, again to be done 5 times. And here in 100 minus 7 there were 2 mistakes that were admissible, in 20 minus 1 no mistakes, in 50 minus 3 1 mistake. Okay, so this will help us to gauge the attention span and concentration span of the individual. So if the individual does all the 5 stages correctly within the time frame, we say that the person is having good attention span. Okay, if not, we will say that they have moderate attention span, and if they are not able to do all the 3, we will say that the attention span is poor. Okay, so this is regarding attention and concentration. Next higher function is memory. Memory is integral part of our working, everything that we do is actually related to memory only. We continuously form new memories, and memory are actually saved in the long term process, also in the long term bank, long term memory, it goes and gets saved, and whenever we want to access that memory, we will just recall the memory, and with that memory we are able to function and finish a lot of work. But this does not happen with people who are mentally not well or they are sick. So that is why we need to assess the memory also. So how do we do that? We test 3 type of memory. Okay, the first is immediate memory, the second is recent memory, and the third is remote memory. So immediate memory is what is happening now, right now what is happening. So we can ask that, or in fact we can also ask for the past 24 hours. We can ask the patient what did the patient have in breakfast or yesterday night in dinner, right? So this is called as immediate memory, right? And recent memory we can go up to 24 hour. Immediate memory we can say that you can repeat 3 words, repeat after me, so they will repeat after you. So that is immediate memory. Recent memory we can go up to 24 hours. What did you have yesterday? What did you do in the evening? What were your tasks for yesterday? How did you complete? Who came to meet you? All these things are coming under recent memory. And then lastly we assess remote memory, that is of the very distinct past. That is we can ask for anniversary dates, birthday, or any significant event that they remember in the past. Okay, so this tells us whether all 3 types of memories are intact or not. So immediate memory, we give the patient names, or we give the patient to repeat 3 to 4 words, and if they are able to repeat those words, we say that the immediate memory is intact. In recent memory, we ask the patient what happened in the past 2-3 hours or during the past 24 hours, and if the patient is able to tell us, we say that the recent memory is also intact. And remote memory, we ask for significant events such as date of birth, all those things. So, this tells us 3 types of memory and how these 3 types of memory are to be assessed. Next is judgment. So, judgment is analyzing what needs to be done and why it needs to be done, whether it has to be performed or not. So, in assessing judgment, we give 3 tasks to the patient. Okay, we try to assess the personal judgment, social and test. Okay, personal, social and test. So, what are the tasks? So, we tell the patient that suppose you are walking on a street, and you see a house which is burning, which is on fire. So, what will be your response? Okay, so here we are trying to assess the judgment, and we are looking for responses that are socially acceptable responses. Okay, so what will be the socially accepted response in this case? There can be many responses. One of them is, I'll try to contact the fire brigade, try to get help. Other response is, I'll try to help to douse the fire, or I'll try to search for survivors, and if possible I can bring them out of the house. I'll try to do that. Okay, so these are socially and morally accepted responses. So, what responses are not accepted? Patient might give some other responses. For example, I asked one patient, what are you going to do? He said, it is none of my business, it is not my house. Okay, so we can say that this is not socially acceptable response. So, we have to judge accordingly, right? So, this is social judgment, that how are you going to do that. Then again, we can give one more example for testing judgment, that is for example, you are walking on a road and you find a wallet or an envelope with an address on it. What are you going to do? Again, we are looking for socially and morally accepted responses. So, what will be the socially morally accepted responses here? I'll try to make sure that this wallet reaches to the owner, or I will post this envelope so that it reaches to the owner of the envelope, or I will hand it over to civil authorities such as police or someone significant who can actually find out, trace out who is the owner of this particular thing, and hand it over to them, and so that it reaches the owner. But what is not a socially accepted response? The patient may say, I will just see and I'll walk off, or I will take what I need from the wallet and I'll just throw the wallet there only. So, these are not socially and morally accepted responses. Okay. Then we come to personal judgment. So, what do we assess in personal judgment? So, personal judgment, we try to understand how the person is doing in his life, and then we try to put some questions there. For example, what is your treatment plan? What do you think? When are you going to get discharged? Okay. Once you get discharged, what all things are you going to do? Or your family is going to visit you in a week's time. What are your plans? What are you doing for that? Okay, so this will give us an idea of how the person actually is thinking on a personal level, right? So, when we suppose we talk to a OPD patient, and he is on antidepressants, and we ask him what is his future plan. So, he tells us that, okay, I have come to change my medication, and within a span of 2 weeks my therapy will be completed, and from there I am going to see whether these medications along with the new therapy regime are working for me or not. If not, then I will probably come for follow up, right? So, this gives us an idea that the person is having some sort of judgment on what needs to be done in the near future, right? And we say that the judgment is intact. Okay, friends, so we have seen judgment. That judgment is also tested in 3 stages, that is personal judgment, social judgment and test judgment. Then we come to intelligence. See, these are all higher mental functions that we are testing. We have tested attention, concentration, we tested orientation, we tested memory, we tested judgment, and now we come to intelligence. Now, intelligence is actually, it also depends on the educational qualification. So, it needs to be tested according to the educational qualification of the individual. Why is it important? Because suppose a person is just 5th class and you try to test his general knowledge on who is the Prime Minister of France, he might not be able to answer that. Or you try to put a scientific question. Do you expect that the person will be able to answer that question? It is highly unlikely. Okay. So it gets important that we assess the educational qualification, and according to the educational qualification we put up questions so that we can gauge on the intelligence of the person, right. So we also know that intelligence can also be calculated by the IQ score. IQ score gives us it is actually a part of the formula for calculating the intelligence, right. So how do we calculate intelligence or intelligent quotient? Mental age upon chronological age into 100. So that is the formula, right. So according to the educational qualification, we are going to put up questions for general knowledge testing, and this general knowledge testing will actually tell us whether the person is intelligent enough or not. So the person will also, suppose you give them an exercise on you had 20 bananas, right, 4 have been taken by your daughter, 2 have been taken by your husband, how many bananas have you been left with? So a lady who is illiterate can give you an answer in a very layman language. So you should be ready to accept that answer and actually analyze the person on based on that thing. So this gives us an idea of intelligence. Okay. So we primarily give general knowledge question to test intelligence. Lastly, there is abstraction or abstract thinking. Now, what is abstract thinking? Abstract thinking implies that we look at a particular thing and get an overall picture of what is being said or what is being portrayed. So in abstract thinking, what is expected, that we put up some items, what we call in Hindi like muhavre, and we actually try to give these items to the patients and ask them what does that mean, right. So students very commonly they ask what is the meaning of, in Hindi they say that naach na jane angan teda. So what does the patient imply from that? So a person who has a intact abstract thinking will actually give you the answer that is correct. For example, this item actually talks about blaming, that you do not know how to do that particular thing, but you are blaming the circumstances, that because the circumstances I was not able to do. So this is known as abstract thinking, right. So we give them items and we try to assess whether they are able to come to a conclusion or they are able to capture the central thought of the item, right. So these all things are coming under cognitive function, and it actually helps us to understand the higher mental functionality of an individual. So what all did we see in cognitive function? We saw that first thing, we need to check for the consciousness, then orientation. So orientation, see in this higher mental function there are so many things that are coming in 3 parts. Orientation comes in 3 parts. We are testing orientation for person, we are testing orientation for place, we are testing orientation for time collectively. Okay, so we put up questions and ask the patient to answer them. Then we tested attention and concentration. So attention and concentration can be tested by arithmetic knowledge. We give them an exercise that is known as 100 minus 7. So they have to subtract 7 from 100 for 5 consecutive times and they can write and give the answers, right. So in 100 minus 7, 2 mistakes are admissible. 2.5 minutes should be taken. If the patient is not able to do 100 minus 7, don't just judge him simply, give him a smaller or easier exercise such as 50 minus 3 or 20 minus 1. I have given the details in the video. You can just go back and watch it if you are confused. Then we check for memory. Memory again is checked in 3 phases, that is immediate memory, recent memory and remote memory. Remote memory talks about distinct or far off memories, events that are way back in the past, such as birth dates, significant other dates, right, anniversary dates, all those things. When did they pass their examination and all those. Recent memory talks about the past 24 hours. In the last 24 hours, what did they do? Yesterday, what did they do? All those things. And immediate memory, we test the immediate memory of that particular point in time, right? So that is memory. Judgment, again 3 types: personal judgment, social judgment, test judgment. We give them social exercises, tests, so that they answer in a socially and morally acceptable manner. If they are not, we will say that the judgment is not right. So all these things actually will imply whether the patient, what kind of care the patient needs. Okay, if the judgment is not implied, the patient might try to end his or her own life because they do not have the judgment on how to deal with life failures and all those things. Lastly, there is intelligence. We check for educational status and we give them general knowledge questions, simple general knowledge questions, so that they can answer the questions and we can get gauge on the intelligence. And lastly, there is abstraction. Abstraction means whether they are able to understand from complex situations what is being said and meant. So this brings us to the end of the penultimate section of mental status examination, that is known as cognitive function, which was testing all the higher mental functions of the individual.